All things are possible by the harmonizing foreplays as he traverses the hallway.
Hey, God. Dude, I'm sorry. Did you just... Is it really foreplay?
The harmonizing fours plays.
Okay, that's just too close to foreplay, but
You really that big a kid and play fan? Like you just House Party 2, Ride or Die? Like you gotta sell foreplay to send fucking kid to school?
okay, all right. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I don't
I
care.
am
I just got my cold open there, so I'm good.
I'm ready. Saul Over Soon.
You're slipping Jimmy. Slipping Jimmy with a law degree is like a chimp with a machine gun.
Who moves cones? Who does that?
Money is not beside the point. Money is the point.
Saul Over Soon.
It's a real thing. I didn't make it up.
You're perfect for each other.
Welcome to Saul Over Soon. On this episode, we're breaking down Saul Gone, the series finale of Better Call Saul. I'm one of your hosts, Jamie G., associate of Big Bill Oakley. I'm here with my co-host, Magnum Mills. And I'm sorry to tell you, it's all over very, very soon.
Dude, too soon. Literally too soon. I am still emotionally raw over here. I am Magnum Mills, emotionally raw. Thank you for checking out Saul Over Soon. If you could, please subscribe to the podcast. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all the good ones. You can find our YouTube channel at JoeBlowFootballShow.com. Check that out. We have a lot of great content covering a lot of different things. You can find us on social media at Saul Over Soon. Please be aware Saul Over Soon is a full spoiler show. We will literally be spoiling everything possible, even like imaginary fan fiction. We will spoil it all. It's all out there in the world. So if you haven't, watched anything from Breaking Bad, or you want to catch a couple of interviews or the Better Call Saul Insider podcast, do it first because we're going to talk about all of it.
That is it. First and final and only warning. And speaking of final, for the final time, we need to enter the details of this episode into the official record.
This is Season 6, Episode 13 of Better Call Saul, titled Saul Gone. Originally aired August 15, 2022. Saul Gone was written and directed by show co-creator, showrunner, executive producer, Peter Gould. Once again, we got one of the big guys pulling double duty to please that booty. And we have an actual plot synopsis this week. 6 years before he meets meth dealer Walter White, small-time lawyer Jimmy McGill transforms into his alias, Saul Goodman, a man who puts the criminal in criminal lawyer and searches for his destiny, hustling to make a name for himself. Shout out Howard Hamlin, who used to call Jimmy Charlie Hustle.
And before we get into our in-depth breakdown, let's just each briefly give our initial thoughts on this episode titled Saul Gone, the motherfucking series finale. Series finale, people, of Better Call Saul.
Can I drink my thoughts? That seems to be the easiest way. Long story short, I love the fucking episode. It was most definitely heavily emotional, more so on the emotion side than, say, kind of like some of the plot side where maybe the Breaking Bad finale fell. There's not a lot of, great moments of vindication or victory in this. It's really small victories, and maybe that Saul is the first person who actually came back and made himself into Jimmy again. It kind of gives you a little hope, or as much hope as you can have for somebody who winds up in jail for the next 86 years, unless he behaves really well. The initial thoughts were just, I loved it. It was a long episode of television that flew by, despite the fact that I swear to God, AMC had a commercial break every 3 minutes.
It's only been, less than 24 hours here, and your boy is still digesting and processing these feelings. Okay. And there's a lot of them. I love this show. Love it. It is way up on the mountain for me. I'm going from like to love the way it ended. I mean, it's sad, man. Like but in a weird way, it's like some poetic justice type shit. Really great episode, just top notch from writing to how it was filmed, cinematography, all that stuff off the charts. And I thought it moved pretty well. There were some interesting cuts that with like a little pause in between, but I actually thought it worked really well. It didn't come off as rough at all. I like how they went from the black and white. We talked about that previously right here on this podcast, Saul Over Soon, about what we thought this last episode would be. Would it be fully black and white? Would it be fully color, hybrid? Definitely like how they went hybrid. And I like how they bounced around this entire universe here in terms of the time frame. There's the Jimmy time frame, there's the Saul time frame, Breaking Bad time frame, there's the Gene timeline. They kind of used all of it. And I thought that was really well done. And I got to say, man, I hope everyone gets a love as strong as Kim and Jimmy. Can I ship them any harder, Magnum Mills? No, I cannot. No, I cannot.
Says a guy who referenced Poetic Justice starring Tupac Shakur and Janet Jackson. I mean, that was a pretty strong coupling right there. And I did bitch about all of the commercial breaks, but I will say, the show kept you on your toes. When you came back from commercial, you had no idea where you were going to be. So despite the fact that I hated how many ad breaks there were, they did always keep you on your toes when you came back from them.
It seems appropriate here that we're once again leaping between timelines in the series finale. Ziggy, Mr. Bakula, don't fail us now.
Ziggy! Lead me far, far from here.
We open with a flashback to the classic season 5 episode, Bagman. Mike and Saul finally locate some water and sit down for a much needed break. Saul also gets to dump the piss out of his canteen, fill it up with water, big upgrade there. Saul asks Mike where he would go if he had a time machine. Mike initially gives the day of his son's death, before changing his mind and selecting the day that he took his first bribe, March 17th, 1984. Saul's answer is much more simplistic. He'd go back to May 10th, 1965. That's the day when Warren Buffett took over at Berkshire Hathaway. He'd take all the money he had left after building the time machine and invest it there. Then he'd come back and be a billionaire, maybe even a trillionaire. Do they have those? Mike asks Saul if there's anything he'd change, and Saul declines to answer the question, stating that he's rested.
Honest to God, what a banger here of an opening for me. For our last time getting Mike, and I think everyone who listens to this podcast knows how much we love Mike Ehrmantraut. I mean, never. Mike's always right, dude. Never doubt Ehrmantraut. I'm really satisfied with this. I thought this was perfect to be able to, I hated Mike's last scene in Breaking Bad. It just kind of felt like it didn't even have to happen. It was hard. This one, he's out here giving fatherly advice and shit, man. Like totally awesome way of Mike, and pointing out money, that's it. There's nothing more. And there is. Saul just at that point wasn't ready to answer to it. He was still running. That we'll talk about that later in the episode. But I love this, Magnum Mills, in terms of Mike, Saul, great scene together. But mostly, I'm just thrilled that was the last time we get Mike. Felt like they did Mike right here.
Yeah, this is again maybe I don't say a higher evolved Mike Ehrmantraut, but he kind of gets it now. He initially thinks, I'm going to go back and just prevent my son from being killed. Then he thinks about it for a minute, and he's like, well, that's really just, that's the outcome, not the cause. So he wants to go back and eliminate the cause, which is his original sin when he took his first bribe. And that's kind of what it is for Jimmy, Saul, Gene here, I think, is ultimately he has to pick what his original sin was. And in this case, I think it's ultimately causing the downward spiral that results in Chuck's suicide. I think that was the first one that he couldn't bear to think of what he did. And that's why you see him here when Mike kind of reframes it as regrets, and Walter White does the same thing later on when it becomes pretty obvious he's not really talking about a time machine. He's talking about regrets, which is exactly what Walt points out when Mike tries to call him out on it. He's just like, yeah, no, I'd rather go back there and keep walking in this hot ass sun through the desert than talk about this. So yeah. Mike has definitely gotten to a point that Saul's not at, and we'll see it takes him, well, maybe not a ton of years, but definitely a few years and a lot of life changes to finally hit.
How is Mike just such a cool customer, though, right? It's like it goes back to the fact that anything you ever could consider doing, Mike can do it and do it better than anyone else. It's remarkable.
Well, and that's the thing, though, right? Mike has the plan. Mike always has a way out. He's always thinking the angles. And we give Saul a lot of credit for being that way, but we really see in the next scene, it's not so much as you think, because he should probably have had a better getaway plan, right? Because in the next scene, we're back in the black and white and we pick up where we left off at the end of Waterworks. Gene hightails is out of Marion's house, but he fumbles the keys. They go under the car, giving Marion enough time to get his license plate number. Gene arrives at his house and gathers his hidden stash of cash and valuables and a fresh burner phone. He has his police scanner on, and he knows that the cops are closing in on him. He looks out the window and sees a police car outside. He managed to escape outside a window into an alley, but the chase is on. Gene runs for a while and manages to evade capture. He even dodges a helicopter, looking a little bit like Ray Liotta in Goodfellas. He takes refuge in a dumpster and gets out a familiar business card. Unfortunately, he also spills all of his diamonds while trying to open the package for the new burner phone. Ultimately, it doesn't matter because the police knock on the dumpster. With no options left, Gene surrenders to the police. One of my favorite bits is right away when he just like does a little cartoon peek out the dumpster and raises it just a little bit. And it reminded me so much of the shot from earlier in the season where you had Lalo peeking out of the sewer, out of the storm drain with the binoculars. That was just a cool little callback there. And it also reminded me a little bit of like, you know, a cartoon character when they get caught hard into the trash can or something.
When this scene started, I was like, okay, I'm excited because I honestly was leaning towards, I thought he would escape somehow. And, you know, it was cool to kind of see him, you know, have the card where he could make the call to the Hoover, you know, to the vacuum cleaner guy again. And that was all fun and brought us back. But I didn't necessarily expect him to get captured so early.
You have to think about it realistically, though. Say he even got a hold of Ed. Ed would be like, A, you got to get rid of the cops before I'd even dream about picking you up. B, he's in New Mexico. So it's not like he's going to be there quickly. That's why the disappearer never really seemed like a realistic option to me, unless he was going to go to him in Albuquerque. I think that would be more feasible, but that would have required him getting out of there. And just when he had to leave on foot, they already had his license plate number.
Yeah.
I was thinking this was going to end badly. So either you end up in a situation where they catch him or he has to do something like, would you rather see him like go into a house and hold people hostage or like get stranded out in the woods and break his leg or something? There weren't a lot of good options here. So I was okay with him getting captured, especially because it was kind of a comical way, right? When you see him spill his diamonds on the fucking in a dumpster, when you spill your diamonds in the dumpster, you're in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, this was his rock bottom, so to speak, right? And he was able to kind of get away with a lot. It was time to pay the Reaper here. Like you said, once he had to get on foot, there was really like, oh shit. Like once that happened and he like escaped out the window, then I'm seeing the helicopter. I'm like, dude, he's probably sat here. Like, I don't know what he even Saul with all his height at his height, with all his power, money, and resources would have had a tough time getting out of that circumstance. Being Gene in Nebraska with no, you know, a shoebox of shit and a burner phone, tough sledding, buddy. Tough sledding. So I get why the show did it. And, you know, it was just very quick though. Within the, what would you say, Magnum Mills, within the first 10 minutes or so here, it's kind of Gene getting captured, getting caught.
Second scene. Yeah. So pretty much damn near right off the bat, the first black and white scene we get, and it legitimately picked up seconds from where we left him at the end of Waterworks. To their credit, the way the show plays it, it's just that he's panicking. Like even when he's trying to get away from Marion, he drops the keys. You could either, again, play it back to like what Bob Odenkirk has mentioned, that he thought that Saul wanted to get caught on some level. So maybe he's kind of just subconsciously tripping himself up a little bit, or just legitimately he was just nervous. He's not Saul anymore, right? He's kind of somebody else. And that guy gets nervous, where Saul Goodman didn't get so nervous. Shout out Dave Porter, the composer here. Like when the chase started up, man, and the score kicked in, it was fucking fantastic, extremely tense. I thought that whole sequence was well done. Even the helicopter, I think, was a digital effect. And I do feel for Gene. I wouldn't leave my diamonds open nearby while trying to do it, but trying to open like plastic containers for some things is very, very difficult. You need to take scissors and have a plan. You can't even just cut the top. Like you have to have a plan.
Yeah, it's got to be a plan that you can execute. Tough to do it in the dark, in a pile of shit, literally covered in trash. We cut to scene 3 here, and we see Gene is brought to the police station, and the officers celebrate his capture by watching some, you guessed it, Better Call Saul commercials on the internet. They give Gene his phone call, and he uses it to call Cinnabon. Cinnabon! Crazy.
Let them know you're going to need a new manager.
Gene is put in solitary holding cell, and he paces around like a literal caged animal, berating himself for being so stupid, punches the door in frustration before collapsing to the ground in pain and then laughing manically. He gets up and pounds on the door, yelling that he needs another phone call.
Peter Gould talked a bit about this, and the idea was he finally accepted the fact that on some level he wanted to get caught or whatever, and then he punches the door and he's pissed off, and then he kind of has that moment, like, what do I do? And in the back of his head, he's like, oh, I'm Saul Goodman. This is the one thing I know how to do, which is why he then asked for the phone call, because he has an actual plan. When they asked before, I think he called Cinnabon because he didn't have anybody else he could call. Literally, who else on the planet could he have called short of looking up calling just a lawyer out of the Yellow Pages or something? So I think it almost made sense that he called Cinnabon at that time, but it made it seem really sad, right? Like, this is it. This is your one phone call, and he calls the teenage girl at the restaurant, in the food court at the mall he works at, to tell her to like fix the schedule. I mean, shout out to his commitment to the bit here, but if he had played B and Gene that hard, he wouldn't be in fucking jail right now.
Exactly. I mean, that was total Gene. I guess that was our last glimpse of Gene, right? Because then, we lose his stash and everything. But this was interesting because I liked his little battle with his own self in the cell. When he's pacing around, he's like, this is how they get you. This is how they get you. Jesus, this is how they get you. It was like he was having a moment, like, what were you thinking? He was having that moment of like, the last little bit that we've seen ever since he kind of started running these cons and then talked to Kim on the phone and then went nuts and broke every rule that he knows not to break, literally took nothing but half measures. Mike would be so disappointed. This was the first time he's paused to be like, oh shit, what did I do? And it was almost like he hit a breaking point where he couldn't commit to, like, he couldn't handle just living this mundane life as Gene anymore. Needed some action, got one or two things that bring him back to his previous life, and then he talks to Kim, and then just all hell breaks loose for him. So it finally felt like this was his moment, trapped in a cell, in a solitary confinement cell, where he came to grips with it. I mean, nobody wants to be locked up and incarcerated. I'm sure it wasn't fun and pissed off. That's why he punched the door. But I think this was his moment where, he didn't have the ball. But Magnum Mills, it's called thinking. You should try it sometime.
And shout out to whoever etched "My lawyer will ream your ass" into the wall of that cell. That was a good, funny bit right there. I did think for a second that, oh shit, he's in jail. Isn't that where Jeff's in jail? So I thought maybe we were going to get a little bit of crossover somehow with Jeffy. Didn't happen. So for the record, we actually got Marion with no Jeff in this episode, which we had talked about before. Did you have any idea who he was going to call when he says, all right, I want that second phone call? Did you have any idea that obviously I didn't come up with Big Billy O, who it wound up being, but I was definitely curious at that point.
Part of me was like, oh my God, is he going to try to call Kim? I don't know what that, like, is she going to like somehow like become his attorney or something? Like, I don't know. Like that was where my mind initially went, because I don't know who else he had. The only other person was like Francesca, like try to call her. I mean, I had no idea, but I definitely couldn't wait.
That might have made some sense if he told her to like call somebody else then and use her as a relay or something, but it did seem like she was done and we didn't get to see her again here. And another thing some people did point out, and there are some parallels here, is the way kind of Saul breaks down laughing is similar to the way Walt White did in Crawl Space, when he goes and he's looking for that money to finally get him away and finds out that Skyler used it to solve the Ted situation. And he's just like, he just loses it, like, oh fuck, like we're just fucked now. So I thought maybe they were going to go that way with it, but it was more of like, I don't know, like his Heath Ledger Joker moment instead of his Joaquin Phoenix Joker moment.
Interesting take there, Magnum Mills. I like it. I'll say this, man. For a guy who is really good at getting out of a jam, this is going to be his ultimate test, right? It just kind of was like set up like that. Like, I still was believing somewhere in my heart and in my mind at this moment of watching this episode that he was still somehow going to find an angle here, right? And that's what that phone call was. Something clicked.
Yeah, I mean, that's who Saul is. Like, this is his skill set. Like, this is him in his environment. This is a home game for him, really. And we find that out pretty quickly. But first, we find out who he called. The cops give him a call, and he calls Big Billy Oakley. attorney at law, and associates, but it doesn't look like he actually has any associates. And his car and suit are so shitty, it basically forces you to be like, man, that's season 1 Jimmy McGill, attorney at law. Saul tells Bill that he's been arrested, and he wants Bill to be his advisory counsel. Bill is reluctant to take the case, and he's positive that Saul is screwed. Saul managed to persuade Bill by convincing him that this is a career-making case.
There was one thing that I absolutely loved here. When he answers the phone, first of all, the way he answers it is hilarious. He uses his punchline and that,
William Oakley and Associates. Trust experience. Trust Oakley. Bill Oakley speaking.
I love that. But I love when he hears Saul's voice and he drops the papers. I thought that was a really cool moment. And he, Bill, shout out Bill Oakley, man. Played it cool, dude. Made me believe that was the first time you've heard from Saul since he was Jimmy.
Maybe not. I mean, we don't know if, maybe they did have some more dealings. Because I feel like the last time we saw them interact, he did call him Jimmy still, but he definitely calls himself here. Maybe that's again after he's been in the news or something. It's just how he thinks of him now. I thought the back and forth between them was pretty interesting, especially when Bill's like, man, really, I got to pay for this shit and everything. And Saul's just doing his whole, you can tell, right? He's in Saul mode at this point. He's selling. And then you get the line at the end where Bill asks, like, all right, you can tell he's thinking about it. He says,
no matter who your lawyer is, you are screwed. So I got to ask, where do you see this ending?
And Gene takes him and he says,
Where do I see it ending? With me on top, like always.
That had to give you a little confidence that maybe, all right, Saul's got a plan here. Because I think Gene's off the board or whatever, Gene/Heisenberg or whatever he was. It seems like we're back in full Saul mode now.
Yeah, and which I love. And you're right. It did give me a little bit of confidence. Like, oh, dude, he's got to play here. He's got one last con in him to figure this thing out. The thing that I like, too, was I actually like that he called Bill Oakley. Okay, because I loved earlier in the season when, Kim's driving back through Albuquerque on her way to the courthouse, and you see where, Saul's. And at the time, I just thought like, oh, shit, that was a cool throwback. You see that used to be Saul's spot, his billboard on the bench next to the bus stop. And now it's Bill. I love this is just something that the show does awesome job at all the time, is bringing shit full circle. And just when you think it's full circle, oh, you don't know, you're only halfway through the circle. You gotta lowercase c. You gotta finish that shit off because they bring it even further. And that's what was cool with this. I actually think it was a way to add a little bit of humor throughout this very serious, kind of tough episode in a way, emotional, I guess I would say. Bringing Bill Oakley into this was a really cool angle. Love that they did it. Love it.
Better call Bill. I mean,
Better call Bill, baby.
I mean, maybe, Kim gets back in the law game. She needs a new partner, right? You got Big Billy Ocean over there, dude. Big Billy Oakley's going to change his name because, Oakley's not going to let him wear the sunglasses anymore.
No, they're coming after that brand, bro. Coming after that brand. Mills, were you surprised? Like what was your initial response when you see Bill Oakley answer the phone?
Made sense. I was just like, of course. Like, he needs somebody. I just figured he was going to be more of like a patsy thing where Saul would just tell him what to do, which I guess ultimately more or less what it was. But that totally made sense. And because we actually heard Francesca let him know that Bill Oakley was doing this on the call that they had. So that made sense that he could call, basically information and get that number and do this, and that he would know who he was. And the fact that he went into private practice probably means he would be desperate enough to take Saul up on his offer. And we see based on his car and his suit that he is. So I think this all tracks from Saul's end.
Yeah. And sorry, I misspoke earlier. I said when Kim was going through Albuquerque, it was actually Francesca. When she was on her way to the payphone and was being followed, she noticed the bench where Saul's.
Well, Kim could have saw it too. She went to the courthouse. She could have easily seen one.
She could have saw it, yeah. But that we got that shot of it though, which was cool.
I'm saying he's Billy Oakley. He's big Billy Oakley, man. He has more than one bench. He might have like 3-4 benches even.
Bro, he's BBO, dude. He's big Billy Oakley. Cool scene here, Magnum Mills. Take us on to the next scene.
After, surprise, yet another commercial break, Bill arrives in Omaha. He and Saul are set to meet with various law enforcement representatives and prosecutors. On the way in, Saul notices Marie Schrader. In the room, the government lays out their case. They're going to throw the book at Saul, and he's looking at life plus 190 years. They make him a one-time offer where he'd serve 30 years and conceivably could get out of jail sometime before he died. Against Bill's advice, Saul asks them to bring Marie Schrader into the room. They do, and she describes how his role in Walter White's empire resulted in the deaths of her husband Hank and his partner Steve and the destruction of their families. When she finishes, Saul tells them the sob story version of the first time that he met Walter White. He doesn't lie about being kidnapped and brought to a grave in the desert, but he does lie about what happened after that. He claims that everything he did for Walter White was because he feared for his life if he did not comply. To back up his claim, Saul tells them how Walt arranged the murders of Mike's 10 men while they were in 3 different prisons within a span of 2 minutes. So, of course, when it all blew up, he ran. Walter White might be dead, but Jesse Pinkman and the others, they're still out there somewhere.
This is not necessarily what I thought his play was going to be, but it makes total sense, right? He's using what he has, which is his ability to sell himself as, a victim. He even said, I'm a victim too. And dude, how good was Marie here? Holy cow, man. I forgot what a great actress she was.
Yeah, shout out Betsy Brandt. When I just first saw her when you're walking through the hallway, I'm a little surprised that they showed us that way instead of kind of bringing her in as a shock. But I kind of liked it, right? Because even Saul knew, because he saw her, they get in the room and she's not in there. And he's looking at the 2-way mirror and finally he's like, just send her in. Like, if she's already here, what's the difference whether or not she's in the room? Because, of course, Billy O, he's doing his best. He's like, no, let's not do that. So I was like, we both sides agree. Both sides agree. Like, you have no power here, advisory council. Yeah, she was great.
Oh, dude, she crushed, man, and I think cut him down to the core, which just helped him deliver this a little bit more, right? Because he was feeling emotional about it, and it allowed him to play up his emotion around him being the victim. Dude, I gotta say though, when he was staring at her through the double mirror and like they're rattling off the just enormity of his crimes. I mean, these are like, to quote Office Space, this is federal pound you in the ass prison, dude. Like, these are serious crimes here. I mean, we're talking life plus 190 years. He's not even really paying attention. It almost reminded me of when in Breaking Bad, when Walter White, way back at the beginning, when he's getting the news about his cancer diagnosis, and he's just obsessing on the mustard stain on the doctor's shirt. And it's like, he's hearing it, but he's not, it was the same thing here. Saul was just like literally obsessing on Marie. And I think he was kind of formulating his plan even more so and fine tuning it because he wanted to bring her in there to kind of lay it all out and have her, so for whatever reason though, I like how they did that with him kind of not really listening to like the severity of these charges, but focusing on her and then bringing him in and laying out his spiel.
That's Saul's strength, right? He zeroes in kind of, as we'll discuss in the next scene, the advantages he might have based on the history of the people on the other side of that table. I do just want to give Marie a little credit. She gets a couple of good, solid lines here. First, she says,
"They tell me they found you in a garbage dumpster." Well, that makes sense.
Nice shot, you landed one there. And then the other one, she says,
"You helped the two-faced, poisonous bastard behind it all. For what? Money."
That kind of reflects back on what Mike said earlier in the episode. Like, and everyone, like, Saul just thinks money's going to solve everything, right? Like, money. It's just going to solve everything. And it turns out when he escapes, he's got plenty of money. He's got diamonds and everything, and the money doesn't fucking help him.
Well, and I love that too, because that's kind of a runner here, in that opening scene with him and Mike, and Mike calls him out and he goes, "Money, that's it." And Saul literally says, "What else?"
That even calls back an earlier exchange that he had with Chuck a long time ago when, like, he tries to say, like, Chuck's like, "Oh, money's besides the point." And Saul's like, "No, fuck that. Money is the point." So this isn't exactly a new modus operandi for Saul. For a long time, he has been basically like, if I have enough money, it'll all be cool. And it certainly worked for a long time. I mean, he even got to get disappeared once, right? Just paid a bunch of money. And if he just keeps his nose clean, free and clear. But, you got to rob malls and cancer dudes and stuff.
Marie doesn't respond well to Saul's story here, and AUSA George Castellano seems to think Saul's full of it. But Saul notes that Castellano has never lost a case, and all Saul needs to convince is just one juror. He only needs one. Saul is just looking for some wiggle room here, and Marie pleads with the AUSA not to negotiate with Saul. He's reluctant to go to trial, and he's ready to bargain. Marie is not pleased at all by this, and she storms out of the room and eventually the building.
This is perfect Saul, right? Like, he got a little bit of intel, like Bill Oakley told him, dude's batting 1,000, never lost a case. If you remember A Few Good Men, that was Tom Cruise's deal in that movie, right? Perfect batting average because he never went to trial. Like 29 cases, 29 plea bargains. So Saul sees that's the case here, meaning this guy is going to be desperate to avoid a trial, which basically hands Saul the leverage. He doesn't even have to give them that much to knock, life plus 190 down to 7 and change. We'll see in a minute here. So shout out Saul Goodman. This is him in his element.
Yeah, he is laser focused here, and he's quickly and so calmly under pressure here. Just a cool customer, dude. Quickly gains back the hand here, right? I mean, we start the previous scene with them rattling off life plus 190 years, no chance for everything else. Best case Ontario, 30 years. But like, he goes from there to, like you said, we'll see 7.5. He gains a hand back, and just, I don't know, man. It's like they could make a whole show out of how awesome Saul Goodman is, right?
Thoughts on the Marie cameo overall? We see her again in the courtroom later, but she doesn't speak or anything. Did you think that it worked well here? Did it feel forced at all, trying to get another Breaking Bad character in here? We kind of thought there would be a random cameo somewhere. I was really pleased with how this worked out, and I think it actually made sense realistically why she would be involved, especially because her husband was a DA officer and everything like that. So I think it all tracks, and it worked well for me.
Yeah, I gotta say, man, I was not expecting Marie. Not at all. Dude, I was a Hank guy. Trust me, I like Hank a lot. Was not expecting Marie, and I like that the show went there. And like you said, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, if that is something that they are gonna, yes, drugs, money laundering, all that stuff, very, very bad. Gonna go after it. But the death of a DEA agent like Hank Schrader, that is. They are absolutely going to try to seek justice for that. I even like that they brought back Gomi's spouse, Steve Gomez. Shout out him. He was a great partner. Him and Hank and Gomi were the guys. Thought she performed fantastic here. There was a fairly decent list to choose from. If you wanted to creep back in a Breaking Bad character, she wasn't even on the list for me. But I got to say, dude, I'm really glad they did and didn't give us like another flashback thing to get Hank or nothing. I like that they went with this here. So, I was kind of hoping to see Walt Jr. one last time, but I'm kidding. But I gotta say, man, I was a fan of what they did here with bringing Marie.
You can't have Walt Jr., man. He would have cried at Saul's breakfast bar. Like, this is it. This is all breakfast is. That dude, he must be, I'm just going to, in my head, picture that Walt Jr. now owns a chain of Waffle Houses. Like, he is just locking down breakfast across the Southwest.
I hope so. Shout out Walt Jr.
After the commercial break, yep, another one. There are a lot of these. We see that the two sides have been negotiating for a while. The table is strewn with food wrappers and empty drinks. The prosecution side of the table seems very flummoxed, while Bill is happy for the food, and Saul seems at ease overall. He's worked them down to 85 to 90 months. That's about 7.5 years, down from life plus 190. Saul's kind of good at this, right? But that's not enough. He also wants to serve his sentence at the low security facility where Bernie Madoff served his time. FCI Butner Lower in North Carolina. Wing D, to be precise. They even have a golf program. AUSA Castellano sighs, gives in, but this is it. They are done. But Saul, of course, is Saul, and he can't help himself. He wants one more thing. Every Friday, he needs 1 pint of Bluebell mint chocolate chip ice cream. That's every single Friday for the duration of his sentence. They finally draw a line. They tell him to pound sand. So Saul offers to give them something else in exchange. He offers up information about Howard Hamlin, only to find out that Kim had recently confessed to all of the events leading up to Hamlin's death. Saul is kind of speechless, but Bill quickly agrees that they'll take the deal. We can tell Saul is absolutely rocked by finding out that Kim actually confessed after he went and told her to do so.
Mills, this wasn't necessarily about the ice cream, was it? I mean, shout out Bluebell mint chocolate chip, dude. Like I almost got a bowl just for this podcast right here, just to eat it with all of you. But this was something bigger than that. But you did see something change, right? Like, my question to you, gun to your special agent Johnson, was Saul going to go forward with this and take his 7.5 years if Kim didn't get brought up and didn't confess and wasn't a part of this?
You can bet your special agent Gomez he was. That totally changed everything right there. The fact that Kim confessed, and then because in his head, he's, the wheels are turning, and we're going to see. I'm not sure why he didn't ask Bill about it now. We'll see in a minute. He tries to get the lowdown or the scoop, as you will, to make a little ice cream reference about the whole Kim thing. But yeah, like, he's sitting here, and that's when Bill finally, this is the only word he gets in edgewise the whole episode, really. When Saul can't say anything, he's like, yes, deal, please. One deal, please. We will make signature on deal. Thank you. He really needs some of those associates, man. I hope you're doing a good job for him, because he does seem like he needs a little bit of help here. He
really does. I will say, dude, I like that they spent a lot of time here doing kind of some courtroom shit, right? I mean, that was kind of cool. And it was kind of one last kind of, I don't know if it was like paying homage a little bit to just, Saul, for what he was, you got to credit him, man. He found a niche and he was really good at it, dude. Was he as good as an attorney and as technically sound as his brother Chuck or Kim Wexler? No, even a Howard Hamlin for that measure. But Saul had something none of them had, and it was on full display here. So I just got to shout out his bravado and his skill set, man. And I think it's a little bit underrated because of all the cons and all the kind of criminal shit that he did. He could get down in a courtroom as well.
Oh, well, not even in the courtroom, but in the courthouse.
In the courthouse.
That was the first couple of seasons, right? Like, all you used to see is Saul and Bill negotiating these kind of fucking plea agreements, like in the bathroom, at the coffee machine, going back and forth. And I know he's not negotiating against Bill here, really with Bill, but you get the idea. He's done this so many times, like he's put in the reps, right? You go to a sports metaphor at practice, Saul has a lot of practice at this in doing it for various levels of crime. Everything from the occasional weenie whirling to, murder. He's been there, seen it all. And I think that's why he's so good at it. I do want to shout out one cool thing here is when he has to be put in the Bernie Madoff prison, he mentions ADX Monroe's. He calls it the Alcatraz of the Rockies. That's where he doesn't want to go. That's where he winds up serving his entire sentence, is at ADX Monroe's, the Alcatraz of the Rockies. So you see how much he really did get in this deal that he, is going to give up later on.
Yeah. It's an unbelievable turn of events, Magnum Mills. Don't you worry, viewers. We're going to get to it right here, right now on Saul Over Soon. But before we do, we return from the break, yes, another, and this time we're in color, and we're in a familiar basement here with Saul Goodman and Walter White. This is back when they were waiting to be disappeared after the events of Ozymandias. Walt is trying to repair the hot water heater when Saul poses him the same time machine question that he asked Mike earlier in the episode. Walt responds very differently than Mike, and he lectures Saul about why time travel is scientifically impossible. He surmises that Saul is really asking if he has any regrets, which is correct. Walt tells him the story of Gray Matter, the company that he founded after college. Walt sold his share willingly, but feels that he was manipulated. Saul tells Walt how he regrets having actually hurt his knee this one time while he was executing a slip and fall con back in the day. Something seems to click in place for Walt, and he comments, "Huh, so you were always like this." That line right there, Magnum Mills, that shit cut deep. Like, we saw Walt go from somebody you feel bad for with cancer doing this to being like one of the worst humans in existence, to the point where even the most like diehard fans, I think most people by and large were ready for Walt to like die or go to, like, we were ready for Walt to kind of end. Walt was very, very, very bad. Okay. Even at this point, Walt was a very bad person in that basement. For him to kind of flip it on Saul, where it's like, huh, you were always a piece of shit. Like, that was kind of wild, man. And again, here we are, another scene in this episode, 2 times now, where Jimmy has an opportunity to kind of come clean with his conscience a little bit here and accept what mistakes he's made and what regrets he has. And he gets a little bit closer with Walt basically forcing him to admit it's a regret and not some ridiculously stupid, scientifically impossible time machine, but he still doesn't do it. And I just thought that was such a powerful moment in this. And, you know, obviously the way this episode is evolves, we get to Saul kind of accepting it and being able to face his regrets, and doing it in just a crazy way here, kind of really proved to be a stand-up guy. But this was kind of strike two, where he proved he wasn't ready yet.
I just have to say that this scene was almost fucking perfect as far as two actors that hadn't worked together in a long time. And like Cranston is Walt White here. And that's what you see, right? This reminds you just how smart Walt White is. Is he a dickhead? Absolutely. Kind of a megalomaniac? Yes. Many problems, but he's extremely intelligent. He's doing all this while figuring out how to basically like fix their hot water heater with just the random shit they have in this basement. And he immediately sees through Saul, and he just doesn't really care, right? Like, he is past regrets. Like, Heisenberg at this point would be like that dude, you know, the dude who got like the no regrets tattoo on his face with regrets spelled wrong. Like, you get the feeling Heisenberg would tattoo that shit on his head at this point. He really doesn't have any regrets. Maybe he feels that a little bit later in that episode, because this is part of Granite State, which is the penultimate episode of Breaking Bad. This is the first part of that. I haven't done it, but my guess is if you cut these together, this is going to be really close. Like, this is definitely going to match up very well, despite the fact these were filmed, again, years apart. And this scene in particular was filmed, I believe, back in April of 2021. It was one of the first scenes to be filmed for this season. And it was still when they were basically having to do all of the COVID protocols and everything like that, as far as face shields. And so there was a lot that went into this. And they were also trying to keep it very secret at the time about Cranston being on set. So there was a lot going on with this, and they filmed this before there was a script for the finale. They had an outline, but they hadn't even written the script yet. So I think, considering all those things, even just not, I just thought it was perfect, basically. Like, you could just edit this right into Breaking Bad and it would fit exactly where it should.
It was so perfect. For a second, I had to actually think back, wait, is this a flashback or is this a new scene? Like, are they just pulling a scene from Breaking Bad? And because I remember them two being in that basement in the white t-shirts, and like, I remember this whole thing, right? And again, Walt having that thick goat with the he was already full blown, like, I remember this to the T. And that's how good it was, where it's like, wow, dude, that was so close, where for a split second I was like, is this just footage from Breaking Bad or is this a real thing? Plus, I was thinking about this. We knew going into this back half we were going to get Pinkman and we were going to get Walt, but we weren't sure how, or together, or with who. I really like that they gave us a scene of them together with Saul. That was one of my favorite scenes. I like the scene with Pinkman and Kim, and I'm really happy they did this. Maybe you could say, it's, you know, fanfare just to get these two together. But dude, I thought this actually had impact on the episode. Again, to the point I just made, another time you're kind of revealing Saul is not ready to face, you know, his demons and his regrets. And I just, you know, and to the point where you get somebody who's like gigantic, horrible human, like Walt, who basically is like, I have no regrets. I've just accepted everything that I've done. I'm a terrible person. Him calling out, you know, Saul. So I thought that was really cool. I love this scene, dude. I'm glad they did it, and I'm glad they put it in. Thank you for sharing some of that background around, you know, how they filmed this with the COVID, with the technical stuff. That makes me like it even more. And I got to ask you, Magnum Mills, were you hoping for a smidge more meshing with pure Jimmy McGill and Walt, or did this suffice for you? Kind of a fun story of like slipping Jimmy told by Saul.
The latter. This is really the only time throughout even the flashback we got with Kim, like I said, during Breaking Bad, where he really alludes to being Slippin' Jimmy. You know, he's never really had this kind of conversation with anybody before. I mean, I guess you can maybe assume, you know, maybe with Huel a little bit, because Huel knew him back in the day or something. But as far as, any of the major characters, this is the only time we even hear him really refer to like that. And it's like, oh yeah, I did slip and fall to get my way through bartending school. Like that in itself, I don't even know if that's real. We've never heard him talk about being a bartender before, I don't think. Like he might have just, even at that point, been kind of bullshitting because he can't help himself.
Oh, dude, how much would like a Jimmy not quite evolved into Saul crush at like making drinks and like running little cons and stuff, dude? Like that would be, it tracks for me, man. Would he be full on Tom Cruise and Cocktail? Maybe not, but I think he would crush as a bartender and be able to get over on a few people for sure.
So what you're saying is you're pulling for a Cheers reboot, but the bartender, instead of being a retired baseball player, is an ex-con who got paroled somehow miraculously because he's got some superhero lawyer chick or something.
Yes, please do that. And literally everyone knows your name, dude, because you better call Saul. Hey,
you bring Cliff and Norm
jail
back. I'm good. Bring Cliff, Norm, and Gene/Saul/Jimmy. I'm there for it. I think it can work. I don't know if we'd want to still set it in Boston, but we can have conversations about that. So I guess we both like the Walt White cameo here then. No complaints.
No complaints from me, Magnum Mills. I thought this was good. Think about how big of a choice it is and a decision it is. Like, where do we want to use Walt? Like, what are we going to do with him? How do we... I like these more intimate settings with Walt. I think it makes the most sense. And this one to me, dude, believe it or not, I thought the scene had a ton of meaning to like kind of not just even this episode and where this thing was going, but I thought it added value to the whole kind of universe here of Saul and Breaking Bad. I was really impressed with this scene.
Well, it gives context to regrets on both sides. Be it the way Walter White maybe didn't have any regrets by the end of the Breaking Bad finale. And I think that's what you're going to get here by the end of the Saul finale. Not necessarily that he doesn't have regrets, but at least that he's now acted on them instead of just letting them consume him. And you do get a through line here with the flashbacks. They're all talking about these regrets, or you could do things differently. They all, frame it a little bit differently, but Mike, Walt, and Chuck are all talking to Jimmy/Saul about the same thing, about the ability to kind of look back and reflect on what you did wrong or what didn't go right, and the fact that it's in theory never too late to at least try to change as much of it as you can.
100%. Fantastic scene there. And from there, we dissolve from color back into black and white. We find ourselves now on an airplane. Saul is being extradited back to Albuquerque, and our boy Big Bill Oakley is also on the plane, and Saul presses him for information about Kim. Bill tells him that Kim also told Cheryl Hamlin, who most likely is going to file a civil suit against Kim. Cheryl could take everything that Kim has and everything that she will ever have in perpetuity. Saul tells Bill to contact the prosecution team and tell them that he has something else to trade. The clear implication here is that he's going to provide evidence against Kim. Bill seems a bit unsure, but Saul assures him that it's really good ice cream.
It's not really about the ice cream, is it?
Can't be, brother. Can't be. It's good. mint, hey, it's good. But Bluebell, it's not that good. I mean, Ben and Jerry's fish food or anything.
Yeah, no ice cream is that good, I think. Shout out Peter Dissett. That's the actor who's playing Big Bill Oakley here. He's just his facial expression game, because he doesn't actually get a lot of lines throughout the episode outside of that initial phone call. It's mostly just reaction shots or background reactions. And he just crushes it the whole way here. Just his body language. Even at the end, he's got to use a pisser, and he's finally like, yeah, I'm going to go to the John now or whatever. Like, he's just perfect here. I guess my only real question about the scene was, did you think there was any chance that Saul was actually going to throw Kim under the bus?
No, like the only way, not for the ice cream. Okay. But the only thing that I thought maybe could do that is I thought maybe maybe somewhere he went to some dark place throughout all of this where he's so hurt that she left him that maybe he wanted to get even with her. And maybe some way, somehow he thought, well, she deserves to be there too. Maybe, if I do this, she'll be with me for those 7.5 years or whatever it is. That's the only partial thought, but it wasn't even like a strong thought. It was just like, how can I make sense of this? And that's what I was able to come up with.
Pretty much tracks for me again. And not really a ton here. It's just setting up the idea that Oakley's going to get in contact with people. The idea being, maybe Kim is going to hear about this. I think that was if I remember correctly, the tweet I put out on the Saul Over Soon account was like, oh shit, is he really going to tank his deal just to see Kim? Like at this point, I could kind of smell a little bit what the Saul was cooking, so to speak.
Yeah.
Then we move from the sky to the swamp and check in on Kim back in Florida. After lunch, she decides to leave work early. She heads over to Central Florida Legal Aid, an office offering free legal services. She volunteers her services and is immediately put to work. She starts by answering phones and quickly works her way back to the doc review. She gets a call from Albuquerque ADA Suzanne Erickson. Suzanne tells her that this is an unofficial call, but she has the right to know. Saul has been arrested, and he's going to offer testimony which could affect her personally. Dun, 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 dun. Light note here, real quick. When's the last time you went to a Red Lobster?
Ooh, it's got to be at least 10 to 12 years ago. Went for the biscuits, bro, and the all-you-can-eat shrimp.
I'm pretty sure it was sometime in the 1990s for me. It's been a long time.
Been a hot minute, bro. Would you go again, Magnum Mills? I mean, does Red Lobster appeal to you in your world, or is just
what
no?
Kind of drink specials do they have at happy hour at the bar? And do they have a bar? I guess those are the two main questions. Not a big seafood guy, and if I was going to get seafood, it would not be from Red Lobster. You'd have to sell me on the fact, like you said, like they have like the best bread or biscuits or fries or something.
Oh, them cheddar biscuits are dope though. At least they used to be. I will say that
they got the cheddar bobs over there. They got them
cheddar bobs, bro. Yeah. Oh yeah. I think I did it at like a conference. It was the only thing like walking distance to my hotel, and I was in a really shitty town, and there was nowhere to go. So I think that's
only game in town is why that is the most viable reason to go to Red Lobster is the only game in town. Because sometimes, yes, if it's a one lobster town, what are you going to do?
Ooh, as long as it's red and not blue. Thoughts on Kim here, where she is kind of mentally?
I think you could tell that she had progressed after spilling her soul to the ADA and to Cheryl Hamlin last episode. Here you see like she hesitates for a minute when someone asks her something. Like it's literally about like a restaurant she went to. And she kind of hems and haws, and then she says, it was fine. That is an improvement from last episode where she couldn't make a decision about anything. Again, that's not like a super ringing endorsement or back to full Kim, type blonde ponytail mode. But I think you could tell like she was, I haven't watched how Stella got her groove back in a minute, but I would say she's at least like, halfway through the first act here or something, or maybe even into the second act.
Yeah, she's getting it. And it's nice to see, is it not? I mean, and we kind of thought that maybe her, and again, not just going and spilling her guts, but literally sitting in front of Cheryl Hamlin and passing that piece of paper over to her. That was almost some sort of like spiritual healing, ritualistic shit, right? I mean, she needed that to kind of cleanse her soul so she could at least have some kind of life, because clearly she didn't have any.
She goes to work. I'm assuming this is all on the first day she's volunteering. And she goes from the phone to doc review, filing all the shit, and it's dark. Like she's been there all day. Like that's Kim, right? No half measures. She decides she's going to volunteer. She's literally on her first day, like already working her way up the chain. She'll probably be number 2 by lunch tomorrow.
Yep. And I loved seeing it, man. Like I like Kim when she's doing things that brings her joy. Everyone deserves that, but certainly Kim. Kim, we love you. Thank you for living. Thank you for just living. That was remember when this season 6 was about to start, and we were like literally like, don't kill Kim, like whatever you do. Thank you for living, Kim. That makes us happy.
Greatest legal mind I ever knew.
Thank you for that, but I will say we could have used a Kim gets her mojo back montage. Show is always so good at montages, so I would have loved a little like nice, cool 2.5 minute legal Kim getting her groove back montage. That would have been cool. Maybe she like gets rid of Glenn, or just like she kicks him out, just going nope, 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 and kicks him out. I think that would have been cool.
Bro, what would the song for that montage have been? Could we have done Taking Care of Business every day? taking care of business.
I have no idea why, but Spirit in the Sky popped in my
Spirit
head.
in the Sky.
I have no idea why. It's because another movie has used it, probably in a Florida scene, I feel, but that's Spirit in the Sky.
Wow. Good call on Spirit in the Sky. Let us know what you would use on the Kim Gets Her Groove Back montage.
Yeah, I don't want to second guess. They didn't actually do it, so we're not second guessing, because usually the musical accompaniments on this show are fucking right on. And speaking of that, after surprise, fucking surprise, another commercial break, we see that Saul is headed for his day in court. He walks down a hallway wearing a classic Saul Goodman suit with a trademark smirk on his face. All things are possible by the harmonizing fours plays as he traverses the hallway and finally arrives in the courtroom. He and Kim lay eyes on each other for the first time ever in black and white. Marie Schrader and Blanca Gomez are also present. As Saul sits down, he shares another look with Kim, who's tapping her foot a mile a minute. The song ends, but it's time for Saul to finally face the music. And right as this happens, you hear Saul whisper, "It's showtime." I'm almost positive, a direct reference. There's a pretty famous meme. Everyone uses it when Saul's starting. It's from Mr. Show with Bob Odenkirk, where he says, "It's showtime, folks." And everyone always uses it at the beginning of Saul on Twitter. I'm like 99% positive that had to be a deliberate reference. So that's a shout out, Show. You did the thing.
Yes.
Twitter was very happy we did the thing.
Yes, dude. And Mr. Show was an awesome, great sketch comedy show. But we're not here to talk about that. But good callback, Mills. I really love this scene. Saul just walking. I wish I had that much confidence in life to walk through the hallway on my way to a serious sentencing wearing that suit with that nice smirk on my face. The background music here, the way it was shot, the eye catch. Dude, this, for not being a huge scene, this was fucking awesome.
Yeah, dude, this was we didn't get a lot of montages. This was more of just a straight musical sequence than a montage. The only thing I would have liked better is if we could have seen that this was the specific suit from the mall and he got it but because he somehow got Jeffy out of jail and managed to get Jeffy to go buy the suit and bring it to him. Just to see that would have been great and showed you just how on top of his Saul Goodman game he was. I mean, that's super minor, but in my head, that's how he got the suit. He managed to get Bill to help him get Jeffy out, and then he still got Jeffy under his control, even though Marion, literally turned him in. Because he's in full Saul, just full Saul.
Full Saul. Shout out to Odenkirk here, because for a split second, when he looks back at Kim and he notices Kim's in there, for a split second, he had me not necessarily knowing which direction this was going to go. Was he sad and scared and now, oh shit, she's here? Was he out for vengeance with her? Was he saying, what ended up happening, which he was glad that she was there so he could show her that he did what she asked him to do, just like she did with him, with turning her, so with confessing. So I like those looks, because it created just a little bit of doubt from the viewer standpoint, to where it's okay, what way is this going? Right? We're getting seriously into the fucking meat of this episode here. We're deep, dude. We're so deep, put her ass to sleep. That's how deep we are here. And I gotta say, I really like this, man. I thought it was fantastic work by both Reese Seahorn and Bob Odenkirk, and it created just a little bit of doubt for me to not quite know what was going to happen here.
I had a pretty good idea of it, but it's just mostly because this is what I thought was going to happen to a certain extent as soon as Saul learned that Kim had confessed, because I think he also feels responsible for that, right? Because he's the one who told her, they're all dead, go confess. So I think that this is a problem that he ultimately feels he made for himself, and now he's imperiled Kim when he didn't mean to do so. By doing so, by even doing that and being angry with Kim, he caused all these problems. If he just never has a conversation with Kim, they don't get to have that moment in jail, but he's also only in jail for 7 years. So you could kind of look at it as a damned if you do, damned if you don't. But overall, I thought this was just a great setup, and you have to just know, this is what's coming, right? We're at the fireworks factory now, I think. I don't think there's any doubt that when we get, into this next scene here and the judge pounds a gavel, oh shit. The proceedings begin. And there's some lengthy introductions. We see just how outgunned Saul and Bill are. It takes the prosecution like 3 hours. Well, it's more like 90 seconds, but they have to introduce all of the people there. Finally, we get down to the business at hand. The judge seems very skeptical about the terms of the plea agreement, but Bill assures Saul that she always follows the government's sentencing recommendations. Saul asks to address the court, and eventually the judge allows him to do so. Initially, Saul recounts his kidnapping at the hands of Walter White, just like he did earlier. But this time, Saul begins to confess to willingly helping Walter White. Bill tries to save Saul, and then he tries to withdraw from the case, but he's unsuccessful in both avenues. Saul Goodman is sworn in, and here we go.
Yeah, this is wild right here. I mean, the way he started, he's literally telling the exact same story that he told in front of Marie in, pre-deal here when they were making the deal. And I was like, okay, is he literally just going to go up there and say the same thing? As soon as he switched it, it was like, oh shit, dude, here we go. Saul's about to just nut up here and just completely man up and just like take what's coming. And for the first time ever, just accept it and just become true to himself with everything he's done. And it was incredible, man. I don't think we've ever seen Saul do that throughout this entire series or the Breaking Bad series. Definitely not.
I don't know that we've really seen any character other than maybe Kim herself actually take kind of the responsibility we think he's going to take here. And what you see is
Jesse
Saul,
a little bit,
maybe a little bit, but definitely kind of more towards the end. And I think that's just kind of and also they're trying to make it like a juxtaposition between Walter White and Jesse too, to give you kind of a clear idea just how bad Walter White is broken. Yeah. Nothing against Pinkman, but when your alternate is not be fucking Heisenberg. But here, I think Saul's pretty confident in his plan, right? The one time you see him get a little bit squirmish is when they read off all of the counts he's facing, and he keeps kind of glancing back at Kim. Like he must know on a certain level that she knows he's been, charged with all these things, but hearing them all read out loud and consecutively is like the roughest part for him. And we do get a bit of humor here. Shout out Big Billy Oakley when he asked to withdraw, when he says,
Your Honor, I'd like to petition to withdraw from this case.
Denied.
Respectfully.
Not a chance.
The judge is just like, nope. You made your fucking bed when you signed up to be, co-counsel for this bull, to be the advisory counsel. So, yeah. And yeah. I also like how they went out of their way to tell Saul, like, look, you shouldn't do this. Like, even the judge is like, you shouldn't do this. They're all like, you should not do this. And Saul's like, no, I'm going to do this. I completely know. One more. This is not going to be my quote of the episode, but this is so good. When Saul, he might as well have said, like, no offense, but when he says,
no offense, Your Honor, but I think I know the law here better than you do.
Any lawyer would probably tell you, never suggest to the judge that you know the law better than they do. Just maybe.
Yeah, that is, again, just peaking. Saul is just peaking right now in all of his glory. The addition of Bill Oakley here was not only a cool tie-in to season one, not only a cool thing with earlier this season where we see him, on the billboard where Jimmy used to be and Francesca share. All that's great. It provided a really, much needed comedic presence here in what was an emotional episode. So loved it here. He's shining with his limited work, and you just got to love the confidence in the balls of Saul Goodman. Say what you want. Dude's got balls.
And suits, suits, balls, I think they come together. You buy them all at the store where they sell decks of playing cards and pool tables. Saul turns around and stares at Kim while addressing the court. He admits to lying to the government about Kim Wexler because he wanted her to be here to see this. He fully admits to his complicity in Walter White's crimes. He emphasizes the fact that Walt could not have done what he did without his assistance. It's fair to say that he was more than a willing participant. And he's not done yet. He talks about how Kim had the courage to move on after what happened to Howard Hamlin. She moved, but he was the one who ran away. He then expresses guilt for not trying harder with Chuck and admits to getting Chuck's malpractice insurance canceled. This began a downward spiral, which ultimately resulted in Chuck's suicide. And he'll live with that. He sits back down and asks the judge to address him as James McGill. Bill argues with the prosecution about what comes next as Jimmy and Kim stare at each other. I mean, there's your quote right there. She left town, but I'm the one who ran away. And he's not wrong, right? Like, Walter White couldn't have done it without Saul. He needed Saul on that wall.
Bro, I thought he was brutally honest here. And he's also right that he made millions of dollars. He's single, like, yes, he never cooked meth, he never sold it, but dude, he was deeply involved in all aspects of Walter White. And that's not even talking about like Gus Fring too, kind of, and Mike, right? I mean, he literally, without Saul, Breaking Bad would have been done in like 2 seasons. Like, I mean, Walter White would have never been able to pull off what he pulled off without Saul Goodman. So, yeah, is he tooting his horn here in a weird time to do it? But yes, but it's totally accurate though, dude. You cannot take that away from him, and that's why it's also so convincing. Is because he's saying it with conviction because it's actually true.
None of the Walter White confession type stuff really surprised me. I figured that was going to happen. What kind of surprised me a little bit was all of the Chuck stuff. I don't know if maybe even Saul knew he was going to go there at the time, but when he goes there and he starts talking about Chuck, they zoom out and they go to this kind of wide shot from the corner of the courtroom, and it's shot where you see kind of this electrical exit sign taking up like a third of the screen, and there's like this electrical humming like you used to hear when Chuck was around the electricity. And
yeah,
it was just amazing. Like, I got just a couple of chills there. And I think that's what lands, right? Because Saul sits back down. He has the judge to refer to him as Jimmy. And Bill says, what was that all about? That thing with your brother, that wasn't even a crime. And Jimmy says, yeah, it was. I think that's him truly accepting finally, like, the regrets, like his mistakes, and being like, even if Chuck really was kind of operating against him or whatever, like, that was his brother, like someone that's being brothers, right? Like, you should both ultimately try to take the high road.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I go back to earlier in this episode, we saw multiple times where he was unable to kind of face this demon. And because you're right, it's not just the Kim demon, it's not just Howard Hamlin. It goes back deeper than that. Really, it starts with Chuck. And so this was powerful, man, for him being able to kind of finally accept that. And great call out with the exit sign and the light. I thought that just, again, added, not to make an ice cream reference, but I'm going to, the cherry on top of the sundae here for him proving his case for kind of clearing his conscience and doing it in front of Kim.
Yeah, it was just a wildly powerful scene, extremely well done, well executed. A lot of people have been complaining there hadn't been enough courtroom action recently on Saul, and they made with it here, man. Can't complain about that at all.
After the 37th commercial break, luckily they weren't in a row, we're back in color for the last time, but we are in the dark. We're back at Chuck's house, sometime back when Jimmy was trying to start his law practice. Chuck is a bit kinder to Jimmy here and offers Jimmy the chance to stay and talk about his clients. Jimmy thinks Chuck just wants to point out what he's doing wrong, but Chuck swears that's not what he had in mind. Were you surprised here, Magnum Mills, that we got Chuck? I know they kind of gave us a little bit of the clue with him talking about Chuck and the whole, the exit sign and the sound and stuff. Did this surprise you at all? Or did you think it was kind of right on par for Better Call Saul series finale?
I kind of thought there would be a Chuck flashback. Apparently it wasn't added till fairly late, according to Peter Gould, that initially when they broke the script, it wasn't in there, and they did add it later. I would have maybe liked, like, I think I pitched before, seeing the first scene, like Jimmy's first day at HHM, and you'd get a scene with him, Chuck, and Hamlin. But that was the same way I kind of wanted to have a scene with Saul, Walt, and Mike. I could just, I kind of like those ideas, but yeah, I thought this was great. And it again plays back on the idea about going back and, maybe not necessarily you have regrets, but you act on them. When Chuck says, Jimmy, if you don't like where you're heading, there's no shame in going back and changing your path. And you see them kind of do the same thing they always do, right? Like they go back and forth, and neither one really wants to give an inch. And Chuck says, we always end up having the same conversation, don't we? And I think that is definitely a regret of Jimmy's, and that's why it's there, because it always came to the same thing, right? Like Chuck wouldn't believe in him, and Jimmy wouldn't believe in Chuck, kind of. Like they just, neither one would kind of take that, the Indiana Jones step out into the invisible ledge there.
The leap of faith, as they call it, Magnum Mills, the leap of faith. And dude, can we just pause for a second and just talk about how hilarious some of these lines were from, I mean, again, an episode of that needed comedy slipped in here from Jimmy. Just very funny stuff, man. And I don't know if he's saying it to be facetious to his brother about the bullshit cases he's stuck working on where, Chuck's doing like high-end corporate law and stuff like that, but it was funny nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that Jimmy McGill at this point was like Ghostface Killer and that he had the supreme clientele. He had a granny who got picked up for soliciting inside the Christian Science reading room. There was a kid who broke into a liquor store and drank 5 bottles of creme de menthe and then passed out behind the counter. And oh yeah, the guy who got caught waving the weenie outside of Hobby Lobby. Real winning bunch. You get why, remember when Howard Hamlin called the tip in to get Saul to the boxing ring, like while he did it with like the guy fucking publicly winking? He's like, yeah, I thought that sounded like a Saul Goodman case. We haven't gotten a lot of Chuck since Lantern, the season 3 finale there, where he commits suicide. Did this scene help recontextualize Chuck at all? Because he did definitely seem to be nicer and more receptive to Jimmy, both as a person and a lawyer, than he did at almost any other time, right? Like maybe it was just because he was alone and wanted company or something, because it seemed to be earlier on into his electromagnetic issue. But it really seemed like he might have sat there and like talked and helped Jimmy with his clients, right? I mean, he did do that at times throughout the early season, but I don't know. It seemed like they were trying to humanize Chuck a little bit more here, I think.
Yeah, maybe. I think you could probably build a case to that. I mean, the show spent, basically the first half of the series, the first 3 seasons around the Chuck storyline, and they started branching out with the Sandpiper thing. I get it, and they needed that to show the dynamic, but he was a major focus point of the storyline for the first several seasons of this series. So having him go away and then never come back other than like a picture in Hamlin's office, or it was kind of a strange thing just because he was such a big character. But I actually think it worked out because it was all part of the evolution of Jimmy into Saul, into Gene, back into Saul, back into Jimmy, right? I mean, he literally went all the way to the end and then all the way back. And so I thought that was cool how they did it, bringing him back here. And yeah, I mean, there were times where the two of them, I wouldn't say got along, but Chuck was kind of, he was never really proud per se of Jimmy, but he was proudish of Jimmy and wanted to offer his support.
Yeah, like he said, he was most proud of him when he was just working in the mailroom. So he definitely kind of sunned him a little bit, but you got the idea that on some level, Jimmy was always hoping that if he worked hard enough and got far enough in the law, the thing that Chuck really loved, that he would gain his respect ultimately. And he didn't, but I think on a certain level, Chuck would be a little impressed with the power of Saul Goodman. Like, for all of Chuck's know-how or whatever, he could not have whittled down life plus 190 to 7.5 years. But Saul Goodman could. Like, Saul didn't love the law the way that Chuck did, and I think that was part of the problem. And also, again, when you're somebody who apparently, it seemed like he loved the law more than anything else, like even people, that's not particularly healthy. But Saul did his best, and he interpreted the law in the best way possible. The good way he did it was the elder law. He legitimately tried to help all them. Even Sandpiper started out, it's him just trying to help these elderly clients who are getting ripped off. Yeah. Ultimately, yeah, he does find some soft spots in the system and use that to make a solid living. But even in the end, he knew he was getting some bad people off. But I like to think that, occasionally he did take on a client who didn't, actually do it.
Absolutely. And the other thing too, Mills, I think you make a good point about them kind of softening Chuck, because you got to think that you brought me back to that the last couple of times we saw Chuck, with just how absolutely just brutal, cold, cutting, knife directly into the heart of Jimmy. Just almost like, dude, stop being so mean to Jimmy kind of thing, right? And maybe that made kind of Chuck's death not I don't know. It's not like we wanted to see it or anything, but it kind of made it like not that big of it. Like they really built it up. This was a much more gentle, Chuck, to your point. And so maybe they were trying to kind of rekindle that of maybe what could have been in that relationship. Because you got to think, man, if Saul, if Chuck maybe supported Saul being an attorney and was proud of him, and Saul kind of kept doing the right thing, maybe those two find a mutual, respect for each other. And that's and things could have been really good where Saul could have maybe came and bounced ideas off of Chuck and vice versa. And maybe they kind of find themselves in a situation where they learn and adapt from each other. That's like what it could have been. And I think this scene was just a little bit of a snippet of maybe what could have been between Chuck and Saul and Jimmy.
Yeah, it's like a sliding doors thing. If he stays there this night and they talk, maybe they develop their relationship a little more, and that ultimately leads to a situation where when they have the Sandpiper thing and they bring it to HHM, Chuck doesn't have Howard box him out totally. And then if that happens, then nothing else ever happens. It's again like Mike. That's the idea, right? Going back to the time of the original sin. Not going back to like the thing where the thing happens, like say call it the Kennedy assassination. You don't want to go to the book depository or the grassy knoll to stop it. You want to go back months, maybe years before that to the point where that developed. And that's how you really stop it. Like, you pull the weed out at the root, so to speak. That's again, this is a finale, man. It's a series finale. Technically, this might be a universe finale. So, as Marty McFly said, it can be a little bit heavy. And from there, we dissolve back into the black and white. Saul is on a prison transport bus headed to ADX Montrose, that fucking Alcatraz. One of the prisoners recognizes him, and before long, the entire bus full of prisoners is chanting, "Better call Saul. Better call Saul." Saul initially seems nervous, but his face quickly shifts to his trademark smirk.
Here he is on his way to where he didn't want to go with Gen Pop. and he tried. I like that at first he tried to deny it. And I thought it was just so interesting to kind of like see that sweat bead right down the middle of the guy. And that guy like kind of sensed him.
Well, no, for the record, I thought he was looking at that guy because it looked like Mike's neck. The old kind of neck with, I think that's what he did. Like he initially like was thinking of Mike and then what, but yeah, like the guy, that's a prison thing, right? Like the eyes in the back of your head.
Yeah. And but he did try to say when the guy's like, "You're Saul Good," he's like, "No, I'm Jimmy McGill. My name's James McGill." Like he tried to kind of like continue his trend of what he did in the courtroom where he said, "Refer to me as James McGill," to, kind of like kill Saul Goodman right there. He tried to do it here too, and it didn't work. And at first I think he's thinking, "Oh shit, man, I could be a target here." But then when you really start to think about it, he got most of those guys off. So maybe he'd be some sort of like, hood prison legend or something. Who knows? But again, classic Saul as he kind of adapts to anything that's thrown to him.
I wouldn't say hood prison legend, but that's exactly what both Peter Gould and Bob Odenkirk have talked about. Like at this point, like he inside feels like he can be Jimmy McGill, but still now do the Saul thing to survive. So of course, you know what he's going to do in jail? The Saul thing. He's going to make friends with everybody. He's going to help them with their appeals, with all the whatnot. And because if he's got to be in jail, Saul Goodman's going to be the king of that prison, right? Like when he gets his solitary cell, not solitary confinement, but he gets his own little private space and everything, he can be Jimmy McGill. But when he's out in public or whatever, he's Saul Goodman, and he's kind of a god to them. And I think that's what he realizes. Like at first, I think he's scared that they recognize him. And then that smirk is him slowly realizing the power he has. Like, oh, these dudes know that I used to get them off, and then be like, I really broke bad, and the feds went in, and like I went in front of the court and said fuck you and told him what I did. That's some balls, right? Like he had 7, like you hear the whispers, right?
Shit.
Like dude had 7 years. He had a deal for 7 years, and he told the court to go fuck himself and got 86. Like, yo, this dude's a god. You get right. Out. You don't want to be the god of, the ADX Alcatraz up there in Colorado, but ADS Montrose. But yeah, dude, you get the idea that he can call upon the Saul persona now to at least make life maybe not as hellish as it could be given the circumstances.
Totally, dude. Like, for a fact he's already in there. He's going to be doing his thing. And you're right, man. I mean, the fact that like even the guards are saying, stop, shut the hell up, stop the chant. not stopping it, dude. A full on freaking. It wasn't quite. What was the HBO Johnsky where they where they would do the sounds by just tapping shit and sweeping brooms and shit. I'm drawing a blank. Stomp. It wasn't a full on stomp situation, but it was close, dude. With the clanking of the chains and the beat, they made a whole on theme song for his ass, dude. Like he was a wrestler coming out to opening music. So love the scene for that. Thought that was pretty badass.
Well, it's no ODB. Never forget that ODB was also a fantastic beatboxer. A lot of people forget that. Sometime later, we find ourselves in the prison, and we're in the galley where Saul is putting his Cinnabon skills to use, baking bread. He seems to get along well with the other inmates and convicts, and a guard comes to inform him that his lawyer is here to see him. Dude, tell me there cannot be a comedy, like workplace comedy type of spinoff that's all about Saul Goodman running an illegal Cinnabon out of a federal prison kitchen. I'm there
for it 100%. Please make that so. That is, dude, how funny would that be? And you get all these different like cast of characters that are like working in the kitchen with them, and somebody wants his job. This is just fantastic.
Yeah, you do it like British style. Like you only do like 4 episodes randomly every couple of years, and it's just really random shit about how like, well, we're gonna get cinnamon, we need to get some more yeast, like, and it's all just so heightened, and it's all kind of heisty shit with just all about selling. Are you selling drugs? Nope, just Cinnabon.
We're moving yeast. We're supposed to be getting the yeast shipment in, dude. Fantastic shit. We are there for that, 100%.
And we quickly find out.
But before we do, Magnum Mills, before we do this last scene, let's just pause. Let's just take a sip here, because we're now entering heavy things.
Well, to paraphrase Nas, now we're into big things.
To paraphrase Mike Ehrmantraut, we're in the game now.
After that, we find out who Jimmy's lawyer is. He enters a room and sees Kim Wexler waiting for him. It turns out that her New Mexico bar card has no expiration date. They exchange greetings, and Kim pulls out a cigarette. Jimmy helps Kim light it, and they pass it back and forth as they talk about how Saul passed up his 7-year deal to end up with an 86-year sentence. But with good behavior, who knows? Kim leaves the prison, and as she waits for the gate to open, she shares a final look with Jimmy. He gives her the trademark finger guns, and they share a final look as she leaves the prison. And that's a wrap on Better Call Saul.
Whew, man, this was...
Dude, for a split second, I thought they were going to go super dark when he's standing there because there's all the guys playing basketball in the background. I was like, dude, tell me someone's going to come up and like just shank him. Like, just that would have been crazy, right? Like, that would have been like the super dark ending.
Oh, dude, totally. Because he didn't have... It would have been horrible. And having her watch it, like that's like some
like, well, this is high, motherfucker, or something like that would have been crazy, right?
Right.
I don't want that. I'm not saying that I wanted that. I'm just saying I was still nervous. We're literally in the final seconds of the show, and I'm still nervous.
Definitely, dude, definitely. And that's a credit to how great this show. Like, we're still kind of wondering, like, oh shit, dude, because they set it up perfectly. He wasn't paying mind nor matter to what was going on behind him, bro. He never even flinched at the sounds of dudes, bumping into each other, playing basketball, moving around, balls hitting, shit like that. He didn't even flinch. He was so laser locked in on her that it would have been literally very easy for somebody to sneak up on him. He wasn't, dude, when you're out in the yard, shit, I'm pretty sure you're supposed to have your back to the fence, man, looking around. Not our dude, Saul Goodman. No. He's got his back to all the inmates, not a worry in the world about what's going on with them. He is locked in and focused on Kim. Powerful scene. And to your point, Mills, you weren't the only one low-key doubting that shit. Like, oh my God, like, is he about to get freaking done right here?
I do want to shout out when they were in, that little, like, it's an interrogation room or whatever you want to call it. Just the way they shot that, it was supposed to be deliberately reminiscent of the scene from the pilot where they're outside in the parking garage at HHM and they kind of wordlessly share a cigarette back and forth. And that's one thing, right? Like, I'm trying to remember. I don't think we've ever seen a scene where they each had their own cigarette. Like, they always shared. It was kind of their thing to do it that way. And you do see when like Kim's trying to light it and her hands are shaking, Jimmy helps her, and then you see the light, and you can actually see the color from the lighter, and that is officially the last color we see in the show. And as they're standing there smoking, they pull out to the wide shot, and you can see the light coming in through the prison windows, and the bars are kind of like halfway over them. And I just thought it was a beautiful shot. And you get another one at the end where they give you the wide shot, and you see all of the barbed wire and the fencing between Jimmy and Kim as they look at each other.
Unbelievable scene here, bro. And let's just talk about Kim, okay? Because we're going to get to the ending and how we feel, but does this mean in your mind that Kim is kind of back in the game here, so to speak? Because she references that, I guess her bar license, it never expires in Albuquerque, so or in New Mexico. Does this mean she's kind of back in the game here, being an attorney? I guess it has to, right?
I don't know. Like, she actually resigned from the bar. I'm just assuming she kept her card, and it doesn't state the actual date on it. So she was able to use that to get in as the lawyer. But practically, because you see her volunteering in Florida, there's nothing stopping her, assuming she wasn't convicted of any crime or anything like that. She can apply, take the bar in Florida, or whatever, become licensed and practice law there. So I'm assuming in one way, shape, or form, she is going to get back into the law. The creators cast were kind of mixed about whether or not this is the last time they actually ever see each other or not. Most wanted to be hopeful, but some did realistically accept the idea that maybe this is the last time they ever see each other. I will say, no matter what befalls Kim, just don't go marry Glenn. Like, don't settle for the yep, please.
I got the feeling, and maybe I am just a glass half full of whiskey kind of guy, but I got the feeling here that the little snippet of her doing the volunteer work in Florida, now her back in New Mexico, being Jimmy's attorney or whatever, even if I got the feeling that maybe she's going to dust off the broom strap here and get back to business. Maybe she visits him regularly. Maybe she tries to figure out a way to get him out sooner. I in my mind, bro, I am left with that, and that makes me happy. And I think that's one of the points of ending this the way they did, was you can kind of maybe draw that conclusion a little bit. And that makes me happy. They're not together, but in a weird way, maybe they still kind of can be on some level here, right? More than what it was going to be when we started this season.
Yeah, it's ambiguous enough. You can picture things past this, and you could even just say, hey, maybe she just comes to visit him once a month from here to eternity as his lawyer or something like that. Yeah. There's a lot of different ways you can go here, and I like how the final scene does play. It's kind of melancholy, but also just a little bit hopeful. I do think the choice of the finger guns was a touch interesting. I mean, because of the context we've had it before, like he gives them to her there when he says he's going to be Saul Goodman, and then she gives them to him at the end of season 4 there when they're going, or excuse me, at the end of season 5 when they're going to do the Hamlin Con. But it works. It all works for me. I'm not going to lie. And even as the ending, I kind of expected this. Once we got to the point we were basically halfway through last episode, especially at the end when Marion turned, Gene in, I really felt like, okay, we're going to a jail situation. And at that point, I felt Kim was probably pretty safe. It was just a question of, did both of them end up in jail? I thought it would be more of a direct thing where they tried to use Kim to get Saul to surrender or something. And here it became more about Saul sacrificing himself to limit Kim's liability overall. But I think it accomplished the same thing. Saul had to come to grips, make peace with the decisions that he's made, and do the right thing in order to give Kim the best possible life. And that was him finally putting someone once and for all truly ahead of himself and above himself.
Yeah. The interesting thing with the finger guns, I want to go back to that for a second. When you think about it, they didn't really have another thing that they did other than, share the smoke, which they hit. They didn't really have a signature, like they didn't, flashy, I love you. Like they didn't really have so I thought that was what they had. And I just love the fact that as hard as that must have been for Saul, he's literally sitting there facing 86 years. His life sucks. That was his little moment. And what he did, though, instead of watching her walk away and feeling all the guilt and all the remorse, I like whether he was feeling it or not, he showed her that he's okay with that finger gun. To me, that was his way of being like, I got this.
I like that a lot. I really, really like that a lot. And I think they did it perfectly here. I don't know how many takes they did or different alts they had, but you see Kim kind of give just the slight look and like not the full on, like, that probably would have been a little bit too much to do the super thumbs up or a huge smile, but just kind of like the okay. Like I think he might be okay despite all of this. He might be okay, and I can continue to live my life now. Like they've both more or less made their peace, so to speak. They've gotten to a place where a healthy place finally. And again, it took an incredible amount of punishment and loss to get there, but they finally got there, I think. Which is different than the Breaking Bad ending, where it was just pure catharsis due to the ultimate kind of everyone dies or gets away ending.
Yeah, I don't know that wouldn't have worked for this, honestly. And dude, the more I think about it, I'm kind of happy with this because Saul had his run, after Kim leaves him, and he has 16 months or however longer, but he had his run where he was just doing whatever he wanted. He made all the money he could ever possibly imagine. He had all the power. He had all the hand. He was doing all the cons you could ever think at the highest level. He had everything that he wanted. He was just missing Kim. Kim went into just a shell of what she could be and what she was, and was miserable. So it's only fitting that now Jimmy has to do his time. He came to grips with it and faced his demons, his regrets, and was honest. And Kim gets to maybe go on and live her life. So I really like how this evolved. And dude, anytime you have a show of this magnitude, let's just be honest, they're hard to end. It's hard to end a show like this popular, this awesome. It's tough because it's a big decision how you do it. Getting through this episode and then getting through us doing this, Saul Over Soon podcast, it's given me even more of an appreciation for just how good this was.
Yes. And they did the hard thing, right? There was a way to make Kim and Jimmy both get disappeared together and do the happily ever after thing, or some kind of flash forward where he goes to jail for a bit and they get out. Like they did the right thing, I think. This made sense. At the end of the day, this all tracks for the characters. It makes sense for the plot. And it's not what you hope for, right? Like you love Saul, you love Kim, you want the best for them, but it's just one of those things. The more I sit on it, the more I stew with it, this seems like, of course, this had to be what happened, right? Like this is, I guess maybe Saul could have continued to live in Nebraska and work the Cinnabon, but that seemed like almost more of a jail to him, right? He had to be Gene there. Now he's stuck in jail, but at least he gets to be Saul and, intermittently maybe a little bit of Jimmy when he's in his private moments. But that seems to be more comfortable for him than he ever was in fucking Nebraska.
Dude, you're 100%. I think he came to the realization was he was already in prison. And it was far worse because he couldn't have any contact with any, like, at least this way, yeah, he's in prison, but he can be himself. And he at least got to see Kim. And now who knows? Maybe he gets to see her with some form of regularity. That is a happy ending in and of itself, considering all things and where this was going just the previous episode. I mean, that's about as good as you could hope for. Yeah, he had to sacrifice the fact that he might not ever get out of jail, and he was, only going to do 7.5 years. He may spend his life there, but at least he did the right thing. And he's got the only thing that really ever mattered to him, and that's Kim. He's got that back to some degree.
He did the right thing for her, right? If he really loved her, that's what you're supposed to do. Like,
definitely, dude. And at least he has that. Because believe me, he's had everything else, and it didn't make him happy. He's got this.
He got arrested after being Gene, and all he could do was call Cinnabon. Because that's all he had. He had nothing in his life. At least this way he's connecting with some part of his, if not his true self. Like, it's even, Slippin' Jimmy is a part of Jimmy McGill. It's not like Jimmy McGill, the lawyer, ever, completely denied who he was. Like, he's that dude who made the confession at Bingo about the Chicago sunroof. Some version of Saul was always a part of Jimmy. It's just like Saul played on the worst and most base instincts of that. And it just, then the stuff with Kim and with Chuck just fed it and just fed the monster. Yeah. And eventually the monster gets so big that it's impossible to feel that you can ever slay it, which is why I think it was so hard. And it took basically Kim being under the chopping block for him to finally step up and, do the thing.
Because I'll tell you, dude, I don't know that there's ever been anything in his life that he cared about more than Kim. It was the perfect way to have it come full circle for me. And I like the fact that he, we started this thing off, he was Jimmy, he turns into Saul, and we're like, okay, this is what we know because it's Breaking Bad. And then he goes to Gene, and it's like, oh, wow, this is crazy. And then he goes from Gene back to Saul, and then he goes back to Jimmy. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful work of art. This entire series was. And Magnum Mills, in short, in closing, my final argument here is, God damn it, I like this ending. I love this show. And I'm going to say that I don't know that I cannot think of a better way for them to do this. Unlike some other shows that we've watched and we've covered and we've talked about, I cannot think of a better way for them to end this series and have it play out the way it did. Bravo to Gould and Gilligan here. I mean, just bravo.
The hard ending is the right one a lot of times. Yes, sometimes it's great to do, say, like, I think Parks and Rec had a finale that definitely catered to the audience a little bit. But yeah, that's a comedy. It's built a little bit differently. I think The Good Place was a comedy with a little bit more of a plot aspects and a dramatic streak that threaded the needle well. But yes, I think they threaded the needle very, very well here. There were a lot of ways where this could have felt it was overly emotional, don't get me wrong, but this could have really, really broken some people. They don't go for any kind of over the top heartbreaker moments. They don't go with pure cheese or anything. The tone is well done. It broke me, but in the best way possible. It broke you because you have that legitimate deep relationship to these characters in this show. And at the end of the day, it's the regret, damn, I can't go back and do this for the first time again. Will there ever be something that fills this particular niche for me again? It's not like Saul is Breaking Bad or Game of Thrones or what have you, but they all kind of fill something for you in the narrative thing you're seeking in your life, and the way you kind of want to exercise your imagination and ride with these characters. And man, this has got to be, of all the shows I've ever watched or whatever, one of both the most realistic and emotionally harrowing, but yet I was with it the whole way. There were a lot of times this show broke me, not just in the finale, but man, there were not, I struggled to come up with many lows, and the highs were very, very high. So
it's a fantastic show, and we will come back and give a series type grade and review. But for right now, Magnum Mills, I gotta shout out our boy Peter Gould, who literally heard our prayers. So for one last time, it's time for Never Doubt Ehrmantraut. And for those of you that are new around here, this is where we examine the actions of one Mr. Mike Ehrmantraut in this episode, Saul Gone, to confirm that Mike is, well, always right.
Well, let's see here. We got the one scene with Mike. He's in the teaser, which is the flashback set during season 5's Bagman. We know from that episode that Mike does indeed get Saul home safely. Everything goes according to plan. Here we see Mike also decide that if he could go back in time, he would prevent himself from taking his first bribe. In theory, this would save his son and basically prevent many of the tragedies we've seen throughout Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad. In not a lot of happy endings in those shows, right? So based on all this, I have to say, even if you gave him a fucking time machine, Mike Ehrmantraut would make the right choice. Huge shock, right? Mike was right. I want to be like Mike.
Like Mike. Like Mike. Always right, Mike.
Oh, and fittingly, for the finale, we actually got some courtroom action, major courtroom action. Saul has worked out a pretty sweet deal for himself, but he torpedoes it, much to the dismay of Big Billy Oakley. Jamie G, have you ever seen somebody go off this stupidly like this in a court before?
Well, this one time, at first I thought the dude had just watched like A Few Good Men the night before or something, because he kept just asking the guy about ordering a code red. He went on and on and on about it.
Dude, this is like the first time ever one of your legal stories sounds like actually promising. Like he was just talking to the witness, right?
The guy behind the counter.
Guy behind the counter. That's the witness, right? He wasn't talking to the judge, right? That was the witness.
Nah, the guy behind the counter, the dude screaming about the code red, was getting carried away, and he threatened to call the cops.
Why would he call the cops in court?
Yeah, in the court, the guy behind the counter finally told the dude that this is a Cinnabon. They don't carry fucking code red.
What? Wait, what?
Yeah, man. Crazy, right? This is what happens when you spend time in between bail hearings at the food court. Shit is wild.
Man, I thought the food court was like Florida. What happened there stayed there. Fuck it. We'll stay in the mall, migrate over from the food court to the trophy store, and hand out some hardware. Jamie G, let's start off by giving our favorite quote or piece of dialogue from the series finale, Saul Gone.
Boy, oh boy. My favorite line is I could have went so many ways with this. There were so many powerful ones and impactful ones, but I got to keep it real on the humor side here. Saul, he is also hilarious. On top of being awesome, he's always dropping great quotes. I got to go with the winning zinger for me. I combined a word there and called it winger. The winning zinger for me, and that was,
I'm going to take a pass on the heart-to-heart, Chuck. One of my deserving clients, he got caught waving the weenie outside of Hobby Lobby.
Hilarious line for me. Yes, you can bash me all day. There were so many great ones. I'll leave that to Magnum Mills to do the one that was profound and kind of the thesis statement for the entire series. You guys can do that all you want. I'm the attorney here. This is my freedom of speech, and I'm decided to go with the funny one.
He's going to take the funny one. I think that is one of the various amendments. I have to give an honorable mention here to one that's a little bit funny, but also I gave one up to Jesse Pinkman before, so I want to shout out Walter White here when he says,
but what about a wormhole?
Oh!
Well, I was watching Nova, and Alan Alda seemed to think...
Oh, well then Alan Alda, he's the expert. Oh, Christ, are you kidding me? Quantum mechanics, we're discussing that now? Stay in your lane.
But ultimately, at the end of the day, you are right. I do have to go with a fairly profound one here, and that's in the flashback towards the end of the episode where Chuck tells Jimmy,
Jimmy, if you don't like where you're heading, there's no shame in going back and changing your path.
As we see that Saul made a very, very difficult decision to go back to Jimmy and legitimately possibly spend the rest of his existence in prison for doing so. Hey, he finally listened to Chuck. Maybe it was a little bit too late, but he finally got there for what it's worth. And, that's why it's such a difficult episode to process, because sometimes the right thing isn't necessarily the greatest thing. Now it's time for our favorite scene or moment, again, from the season finale, from the series finale, Saul Gone. I'll go first here, and for me, it's pretty easy. It's Saul in court just going off, like admitting his truth finally for the first time. Everything from him actually being scared when he was first kidnapped by Walter White, to quickly getting over it, to enjoying it, and being somewhat the mastermind behind at least the business aspect of the Heisenberg Empire. Yeah, I can't really beat that. I thought that was just fantastic. And shout out again, Bill Oakley, who's just doing some fantastic facial acting in the background. As his face just like changes every time Saul says something that adds another couple of decades to his sentence. Jamie G, favorite scene or moment from Saul Gone?
Boy, oh boy, Magnum Mills, that scene you just referenced was my one capital A. I am going to give you my one lowercase a, but before I do, my runner-up would have to be Saul and Mike in the desert. That was an awesome scene to set the tone here as this long episode epic episode really unfolded before us. But my one lowercase a, the one I'm going to go with here, outside of what you referenced with the courtroom scene, I got to go with Kim and Jimmy in the cell block at the end there. I mean, you reference it, man. When her hands are shaking and she's trying to light that cigarette, and he calmly comes over with love, puts his hands around her hands to steady it, and lets her light that shit was powerful, dude. And that last scene between the two of them, I know some people are gonna be like, oh, that's a cop out, you're taking the last scene. Whatever, dude. That last scene was fucking powerful. To me, that was the quintessential moment of this series of Jimmy coming full circle and going through all this, going through Saul, going through Gene, going back through Saul, and coming back to Jimmy. And that was just really, really, really powerful for me. So outside of the courtroom that you referenced, bro, I gotta give it up to that scene in the jail cell, and then in the yard, you know, that whole scene with Kim and Jimmy at the end.
Wow, your chronological references have been very on point this episode. I appreciate that. And I think a lot of people have talked about in that scene in the jail cell when they, you know, like you talked about Jimmy holding her hands as she lights a cigarette. That's the last color we get in the show, and people refer to that maybe as the spark or a symbol of the eternal flame of their love. There are a couple of different ways you could interpret it, but it seems to mean something. So yeah, I don't think anyone's really going to call you out on that one. You know, again, one of the most meaningful scenes of the finale of a, you know, very impactful television series. It's, yeah, a little bit heavy, dude. Again, the Marty McFly thing.
And in honor of one of our favorite characters, it is time to choose our
Nacho Man. I want to be a Nacho Man.
Who is your Nacho Man or woman, the MVP of the series finale, Better Call Saul, Saul Gone?
This is really rough because you could basically cop out like a million ways here. You could easily give it to Jimmy, Saul, Gene. You could give it to Kim. You could give it to Peter Gould. You could give it to the entire cast. I am really tempted to go with one of those cop-out ways, but you know what? I'm going to give it up to Big Billy Oakley, because he was basically the only source of comic relief for this entire episode, and this episode was extremely fucking stressful. I enjoyed the shit out of it, but goddamn, dude. Like, every moment of levity was extremely welcomed, and right down to just Big Billy O just in the background, just being just so dismayed about all the revelations Saul was giving out. It was fantastic. I needed that. Everybody is doing great work here. In theory, if I could, I'd give everyone the award, but it's not a participation trophy. It's the Nacho Man. So my Nacho Man is Big Billy Oakley. No associates, just Big Billy O. Jamie G, who you got?
Oh man, I'm right there with you, dude. I toyed back and forth, just turmoil here of do I cop out and do something or do I not? Honestly, dude, I was this close to going to Marie. I mean, Marie and Mrs. Gomez there, they literally got their justice. And they got it in a weird way, right? Like they get dragged back into this because Saul gets caught, and then they realize that he's going to win and only have to do 7 years or 7.5 years or whatever it is. But then in a surprise curveball here, way down at the 25th hour, they realize, oh shit, he just confessed to everything. And now justice is in fact going to be served on his own doing. That is worthy of Nacho Man or woman status. But dude, I am gonna cop out, bro. I am taking every, and I mean every person involved in making this show. Okay. I love this show. It is beyond impressive. The amount of work, time, effort, collaboration that went into pulling this off is off the charts. Therefore, my MVP is every single person, down to the person that got the coffee for Gould. And everybody involved in this is my MVP. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It has been an incredible journey. 6 seasons. Could not have asked for a better last season. Fucking fantastic all the way around. Everyone involved, you are the MVP. Thank you.
You're not wrong, but that is still a cop out. If you copped out this hard on the Nacho Man, I'm worried to see how you're going to cop out on the grade, because it's time, Jamie G, to stop thinking like Master Chef Gene Takovic and start thinking like Professor Heisenberg, because we have to give a grade to the season finale, the series finale, Saul Gone. For the record, we grade each episode of Better Call Saul on a scale of 1 to 10. Marco's pinky rings. Jamie G, what's your pinky ring shit for the series finale?
Woo! Pinky ring shit. Pew, pew. Dude, this one is wild for me, because when we started, I was not sure where I was going to be. When I finished this episode, I was like, oh my God, I have so much to unpack here. I don't know if I love it or I hate it. I don't know what's going on here. I need time to deal with my feelings and my emotions around watching the series finale of Better Call Saul, Saul Gone. Okay. We start doing this, and I start all of a sudden now, dude, my grade has changed. And I've been on a cop-out roll. Fuck it. I'm giving it a perfect 100. Why? Because I cannot think of a better way to do this. I'm not going to sit here and try to nitpick it. It was damn near perfection, as was this entire back half of this season, as was the first 7 episodes. This shit it's just fantastic, and it deserves it. Therefore, I think this is the first time I have ever given out 100. I'm giving it out. I'm giving it out, Magnum Mills.
The perfect 10, the Nadia Comaneci, the 10 pinky
Giving it
rings.
a perfect 10. 10 pinky
one for
rings.
every finger.
I said 100. I'm putting 10 on each fucking finger. That's how good it was. I'm giving it the perfect score.
Well, you can write it on the fucking paper, dude. I said I'd been saving this one. There were definitely a couple of times, especially plan and execution, I was tempted to go there. I wanted to leave it open for the finale. I can't really poke a hole in this, other than like, yeah, you would hope maybe Gene had a better escape plan, but again, he probably wanted to be caught on some level. It all works. It was a wild ride to watch in a crazy way, because I would say, with the exception of that first kind of sequence where Gene is trying to get away, it's not really tense, right? Like, in theory, like, there's no danger other than what the prison sentence will be or whatever. And still, I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. I think it ended in a way that was both satisfying from an emotional standpoint and made sense from a plot standpoint. I think they fucking nailed it, dude. And that's what you do, man. You go on the bars, you swing around, and you got the chainsaws and the whatnot, and then you land the fucking landing, you stick it, put your hands up, and you get the 10, dude. So shout out Marco. That would have been one random cameo I wouldn't have seen coming if we got some way back cameo to Marco again. But shout out Marco and his pinky rings. 10 of them, brother. It was a fucking finale, dude. I think they hit it. They did it, dude.
Oh, they
just Gundier, Special Agent Gomez. This finale, Breaking Bad finale.
Oh, bro. I gotta give it to this, but Breaking Bad is, if this is 100, if this is 10 pinky rings, Breaking Bad is 10. I mean, it's, or 9. Like, Breaking Bad is equally as good. I think I'm a little bit, I was satisfied with Breaking Bad. I'm more so like happy with this. Like, like, don't get me wrong, like, Breaking Bad ended in a great way, but Saul was different, dude. It was its own show. Really tough to answer. They're both 10s for me, but I think I'm leaning towards Saul. Maybe that's because it's so fresh right now, and I'm still all in my feels about it.
Right. It's like they're giving you the swimsuit issue and being like, pick a girl you'd like to go on a date with. You know, they're all 10s. Right. So it's all a matter of preference. I would say that I think maybe the Breaking Bad finale, I wouldn't say like it was wish fulfillment, but it was a little bit more fan servicey, I think, where kind of everyone got these big moments or whatever. And the Saul finale subverted that a little bit more. Plus, the Breaking Bad finale ultimately got El Camino to tack on to the end of it. Whereas as much as I'd like to, I don't think we're going to really get anything that's a sequel to this unless it's, 10 to 20 years from now, in which case it would be an entirely different show. So I would give it up to Saul. Again, like you said, taking nothing away from Breaking Bad, but I think kind of doing the kind of melancholy, sad ending is more difficult to land than the kind of like tragic but happy ending.
I know many things, Magnum Mills, but one thing I know for certainty is that I know it ain't over till it's over. But if it's not over now, it's certainly Saul over soon.
Man, I do see what you did there. But I mean, seriously, was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? We might be out of new episodes of Better Call Saul, but Saul Over Soon might as well be called It's Not Over Yet.
I get what you're going for, but let's stick with Saul Over Soon.
Fair enough. If we didn't change to Who Moves a Cone, then we probably just have to write it out. Saul Over Soon will be sticking around for a bit longer. We're going to break down the second half of season 6, season 6 as a whole, look back upon the entire series, maybe even check out the animated series, Slip and Jimmy. We'll get to it all at some point, and it eventually will all be over someday, but today is not that day.
That's it for now. Thank you for checking out our podcast, Saul Over Soon. We greatly appreciate it. Please remember, subscribe to the podcast. Actually, if you haven't done it, do it right now. I'll wait. Speaking of content, Magnum Mills, where can these wonderful people find all of it? And we got a bunch of content all available for you.
All of our stuff is always available on major podcast platforms. That's where you find Saul Over Soon. We're on the Spotify, the Apple Podcast, all the good ones to search for Saul Over Soon. Same thing on social media. If you have any feedback on how the finale ended, any thoughts you might have, please send it to sauloversoon@gmail.com. We're from the Joe Blow Football Show. Find our YouTube channel at joeblowfootballshow.com or on social media at Joe Blow Show. The new football season is coming up. You need help in your little bit of wagering, your fantasy football. Check out Seize the Gap Fantasy Football. Again, on all the major podcast platforms, it's Seize the Gap Fantasy, and on social media at Seize the Gap FF. And we're about to cover House of the Dragon, the Game of Thrones spinoff from HBO. We are Drunk on Dragons, once again, on all of your favorite podcast platforms and on social media at Drunk on Dragons. I am Maggie Mills. He is Davey G. Thank you very much for checking us out. If you didn't think you were in the game already, you're certainly in the fucking game now.
It really fucking is Saul Over Soon. We'll see you next time to discuss more season 6, part 2.
This has been Saul Over Soon, a Better Call Saul podcast. This show is for entertainment purposes only. We are in no way affiliated with Better Call Saul, AMC, Sony Pictures Television, Netflix, or any other production company or association. The views here are those of the hosts only and do not represent any other entity. Thanks again for checking us out, and stay tuned because it's Saul Over Soon.